So thank you very much for attending this morning. I wasn't sure what was going to come out this morning from my mouth. Ailments. But yeah, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Maharaj, for inviting me. I'm sorry my better half couldn't come. But she has on vacation also, over on Eco Village. So I can bring my long-range glasses. Can someone chant the verse, please?
There's a book right next to you.
meager, ayusha, duration of life, Satya, member of a learned society, Kalo, in this age of Kali, quarrel, Asmin, herein, Yuga, age, Jana, the public, Manda, lazy, Sumanda Mataya, misguided, Manda Bhagya, unlucky, he, and above all, Upadrika, disturbed. Translation. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Report. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. When the sages in Naimisharanya analyzed the state of affairs of the people in this age of Kali, they foresaw that men would live short lives. In Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened, not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, over sense gratification, over dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. The people of this age are also very lazy, not only materially, but in the matter of self-realization. The human life is especially meant for self-realization. That is to say, man should come to know what he is, what the world is, and what the supreme truth is. Human life is a means by which the living entity can end all miseries of the hard struggle for life in material existence, and by which he can return back to Godhead, his eternal home. But due to a bad system of education, people have no desire for self-realization. Even if they come to know about it, they unfortunately become victims of misguided teachers. In this age, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of many different types of sense gratificatory diversions, such as cinemas, sports, gambling, clubs, mundane libraries, bad association, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and so on. Their minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties due to so many different engagements. In this age, many unscrupulous men manufacture their own religious faiths, which are not based on any revealed scriptures. And very often people who are addicted to sense gratification are attracted by such institutions. Consequently, in the name of religion, so many sinful acts are being carried on that people in general have neither peace of mind nor health of body. The student brahmachari communities are no longer being maintained, and householders do not observe the rules and regulations of the grihastha ashram. Consequently, the so-called vanaprasts and sannyasis who come out of such grihastha ashrams are easily deviated from the rigid path. In the Kali Yuga, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with faithfulness. Men are no longer interested in spiritual values. Material sense gratification is now the standard of civilization. For the maintenance of such material civilizations, man has formed complex nations and communities. And there is a constant strain of hot and cold wars between these different groups. It has become very difficult, therefore, to raise the spiritual standard. And due to the present distorted values of human society, it has become very difficult, therefore, to raise the spiritual standard due to the present distorted values of human society. The sages in Naimisharanya are anxious to disentangle all fallen souls, and here they are seeking the remedy from Srila Sutta Goswami. Nama Om Vishnu Devaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namaste Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane here, let's get on this. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Sasati Gaura. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Prabhupada in his purport really wraps up the situation in this age of Kali. Goes through a long list here of many different types of diversions, sense gratificatory diversions, he calls it, such as cinemas, sports, gambling, clubs, mundane libraries, bad association, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and we can add internet. So, big diversion. Actually, it's a big problem because it can become very addictive very easily. We have to be very careful how we use our time, such a precious time we have. The first sentence of the purport is, the devotees of the Lord are very anxious, always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. So I think of a pastime that Shiva Ramaswamy related in one of his books. He had a dream. He was walking with Prabhupada. It was a very beautiful landscape, very green, very lush and rural. And all of a sudden, Prabhupada waves his hand, and the whole, it just turns into an urban mess. Smokestacks and factories. And Prabhupada turns to Shiva Ramaswamy and he says, just see how they are suffering. Please help them. So this is the mood of course, Prabhupada. He saw the suffering, he tried to help in every way possible. If you listen to his lectures over and over again, and I suggest you all do that, his compassion and his care for people in general is overwhelming. He did not give up. He just kept going and going right to the very end. Prabhupada's last words, actually in both our films on his life, his biography films, is everything is acting and moving by the supreme desire of Krishna. This consciousness is Krishna consciousness. So if we actually understand and try to follow that principle, that understanding, there's no hankering, there's no lamenting. Just a sentence from Prabhupada can be so profound. I remember when I first came to meet Prabhupada in Surat, I was a photographer, long hair, mustache. I just kind of barged in on the devotees. I was doing a master's thesis in photography. We'll speak about that later in the evening presentation. So I asked Prabhupada if I could travel with the party. Again, he didn't know I was coming. Nobody knew I was coming. And he said, so you're going to become a devotee? And I couldn't imagine wearing robes and shaved heads, so I said, I don't think so, Prabhupada. Just see what happens. Yeah. We had a list of items. Can that come up on the screen? I wanted to discuss one by one. Is that prepared? I wanted to discuss a few points that our society is misleading us, how they're misleading us in terms of the goal of human life. Of course, the first one is we're not the body, we're not the mind. But the whole system of present civilization is to encourage that misconception that we're the body and we're the mind. The advertising, the speeches, the comforts, so many comforts of the body and the mind are there. But this is not the fact. And Prabhupada wrote one early article, "Who is crazy?" So if somebody's walking around thinking there's somebody they're not, that is craziness. So practically speaking, the whole world is a bit crazy. Yeah. Prabhupada compared our Krishna conscious movement to a hospital. At least we're trying to get well. Still people are sick in hospital. Not everyone is well, but at least we're on the path to becoming sane. Another misconception that's hammered again and again in our minds is this place is a place of happiness. And anyone who's been around for a while, when you're young, you don't really understand that fully. But when you get older, like we are, it just hits right home. Right, Lawrence?
You're eternally youthful.
No. Yeah, no true happiness. I live in Florida sometimes. You drive along the freeways and you see signs, that for leisure living in old age. And they call it the golden years. I call it the rusty iron years. It keeps going on and on. Another big illusion is that we're independent. And there's so many, courses for, becoming more powerful and decreasing our dependence on others. So there's lots of propaganda that we're independent, we can be free. But from the very beginning, we're just so conditioned to the world around us. Air, water, fire, all of Krishna's external energies we're dependent on. Let us try to be 30 seconds without air. Let us try to be a day without water. We're completely dependent. But people don't recognize that. They just go on with their lives just in basically an illusion. So there's dependence on higher forces, the demigods, and ultimately Krishna. Another big misconception is that we should work very hard. We shouldn't take what easily comes. The Prabhupada says, preaches time and time again that we should take what easily comes because our destiny is pretty much mapped out. He gives the example of two people doing the same thing, trying to earn $1 million. They're doing the same work, but one earns $1 million and the other doesn't. So many factors go into that. There's 5 factors in every action. Can somebody tell me what those 5 factors are? Yeah.
The doer.
The doer.
Action.
The action.
Human circumstances.
Circumstances.
Now I'm not actually referring to the verse now. I've lost instrument of action and Krishna.
Instrument of action and ultimately Krishna. So if we analyze all those things, 2 people doing the same thing, there can be, wide, big difference in the result. We have different mentalities, we have different bodies, we have different circumstances, and ultimately the sanction is by Krishna. He's going to sanction an action at all. So we're very dependent on our past actions and the karma that is produced in our present life. So we should really take what easily comes, not work too hard. Rather, the emphasis should be on our spiritual life. And what the materialists have they have it backwards. They think if you become materially well off, then that's the goal of life. And if they're a little more advanced, they become materially more well off, and then they can focus on spiritual life. Most people don't think about that. But Prabhupada actually says
focused on spiritual life, and everything will come. And we've seen that in his life. Prabhupada just preached Krishna consciousness, and everything came. So we should depend entirely on Krishna's mercy for anything spiritual or material. Another, number 5 is everything is perfect. That's the devotee's understanding. Of course, we see wars, we see sickness, we see so many horrible material circumstances. The devotee sees all of that for himself as his karma, his what he's due in this lifetime. He doesn't blame others. That's a big problem in society. There's so many lawyers, there's so many lawsuits. People blame others for their misfortune. They try to get money out of that. So that's not advised at all, because it just comes back on us. Number 6 is the importance of prayer in our lives. The materialists don't see that at all. They try to take courses, they try to improve their own self, they don't really see themselves dependent on anyone. But the devotee is just the opposite. We depend on prayer. So oftentimes devotees will ask the question, how do I become more advanced in Krishna consciousness? So my realization, and of course the realization of the given in the Shastra, is that we're dependent on Krishna ultimately. We're depending on the demigods, we're depending on so many personalities. And we should pray to them for guidance and for advancement. Ours is a descending process, not an ascending process. So we should depend on prayer, depend on reaching out in a very sincere, heartfelt manner. So I'm going to end the class here, and I'd like to take any reflections, comments, or questions. All right, any thoughts?
Speak more. Tell us something about your experience with Srila Prabhupada, being in association.
Well, I mentioned that, this is failing fast, sorry. I mentioned that first meeting, and Prabhupada said, then you cannot stay if you don't become a devotee. So I got up the next morning, they put me up that night. I got up the next morning and nobody said anything, and Prabhupada didn't say anything, and I stayed for 2 months. So everything that Prabhupada said, there's some, upfront meaning and some, things not so evident. And what was not so evident at the time was that if we actually, this is true for all of us, if we don't become devotees, then we really can't take advantage of staying in the association of devotees who are serious. So that's a lesson. We should never give up the process. Even if we have difficulty, we should stick with it and never give up. I'd like to tell one time that I was chastised by Prabhupada. That's actually my favorite story. Because we learn a lot from chastisement. From glorification, that's a problem. So we were on a morning walk in Denver, Colorado. At that time, devotees they had a very kind of fixated on fasting to improve their health and so on. And diets. Yes, diets. Remember that phase? So I tried that, and it was a complete failure. And we were on this morning walk, and so the subject of diets and fasting came up. And Small Krishna Goswami, kind of toward the end of the conversation, he said, Prabhupada, we should just die eating prasad. And everybody, Prabhupada walked on. So I thought I would contribute something, unfortunately. And I said, yes, Prabhupada, these diets are useless. And Prabhupada stopped, he was walking, I was behind. He stopped, planted his cane, turned and looked at me and said, the diet is useless, or you are useless. Now, I'd like to ask you, why was I useless? Why did Prabhupada say that? Can anyone think of why he said that? It's very profound. All right.
You didn't know how to live for devotional service.
Huh?
You didn't know how to live your life in such a way that's favorable for devotional service.
You know, that's another angle. But for me, it meant I wasn't taking responsibility for accepting the diet and believing in it and following it. I blamed the diet and not my own self, my own circumstances, my own faith in the diet. So that's a tendency, again, I mentioned that before, to blame others and not take responsibility for our own actions. Big problem. Yes.
It says that one of the symptoms of vanity cow is laziness. But then we also hear the statements that, many people work hard like asses. So how do we understand that what is, laziness on one hand, but then people are working so hard day and night? And some people, like I know, that come from different countries in this world, they work 70, 80 hours a week to try and make ends meet. Just wondered if you could reflect on that.
You know, we should always, we shouldn't over-endeavor in anything. Over-endeavor oftentimes means that we give up our practices or lessen our spiritual practices. We should never do that. So we shouldn't over-endeavor, and also we should take guidance from other senior devotees if we're overdoing it. Any further comments, Maharaj?
Lazy about spiritual advancement, even though one may be very industrious about making money and improving the material situation. But lazy, as the Purport says, lazy in matters of self-realization.
Good point, yes. Yes. Prabhu?
Thank you for that. Yesterday you were mentioning.
Louder.
Is there a mic?
Thank you for a nice class. Yesterday you were mentioning mantra is saying to you, never give up. Would you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, never give up the process, even though we might have difficulty. It's not surprising that we have difficulty. It's especially someone who's not born into the movement, like myself. You know, I had quite a wild high school time and college time. I went to Newport Beach Union High School in Newport Beach, California. At that time, drinking was, coming in. There wasn't psychedelics, but then when I went to University of California, Berkeley, that whole thing exploded. Uh-oh. That's right. So, yeah. I have to admit myself, there's been, of course, ups and downs for every conditioned soul. But we just keep going and we don't give up. If we don't give up, Krishna appreciates that. In New Vrindavan, Prabhupada turned to one brahmachari. There was a big istagosti going on. And he said, there were sannyasis, there were big leaders there, but he turned to this one brahmachari and he said, are you trying to understand Krishna consciousness? And he was so flabbergasted, he was addressing this brahmachari that he couldn't answer. But he appreciated that Prabhupada said, are you trying? So if we keep trying, that's what we need to do, in spite of all ups and downs. That make sense? Don't give up, please. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. You've made one point here, which is that we should, there's an illusion of independence. And yet in the purport it also mentions that one of the reasons for a short duration of life is over-dependence on another's mercy. So could you reconcile this apparent contradiction?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
So on your bullet points it's mentioned that there's the illusion of independence. And it's also mentioned in the purport that over-dependence on another's mercy is one of the causes of a short duration of life.
I'd like to pass it on to Maharaj, if he could comment on that, please.
We see in the world today, in supposedly an advanced civilization, that unless people have a job working for someone else, they don't know what to do with themselves. And so the job market makes them or breaks them. Whereas in a real human society, Varnashram Dharma, everyone is working independently except the Sudras. But today, you're considered problematic unless you're dependent on someone else's employing you. You don't know what to do with yourself. We see in so many first world countries that used to have industry, and there's none now. People, the car manufacturing plants closed down. Even New Zealand used to have a Toyota assembly plant. I think none of you remember that. All the manufacturing is finished because it's gone to China, Vietnam. And so the working class is angry. What are we going to do? And then AI is coming. Oh no. First the manufacturing is shut down. Now whatever other jobs there are, artificial intelligence is coming. So people are, they're totally distraught. What will our future be? The young people are worried that the usual standard, the dream that was held out to the people is that each generation will make more money than the preceding generation. You will make more money than your parents made, and your children will make more money than you made. But that's all shattered now, and people don't know what to do with themselves. They're in so much anxiety, as the verse says. Who's going to employ me? What job will be there in 10 years from now? Just like in computer science, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the propaganda was that you study to be a coder, study computer science, your life is guaranteed to make the money. And so many young people studied computer science at the university, right, Jack? Only to find out now that that job market is dried up because artificial intelligence can do what a human coder can do so much quicker. And so each generation has some illusion that they're chasing about, if I depend on this, I'll get that. No one knows how to be self-sufficient. And in this way, there's so much psychological problem, sociological problems, because people don't know what to do with themselves. They're like dogs without a master.
They were trained as sudras. The whole educational system means, you get an education, then you work for somebody. The problem, I remember hearing a lecture, he said everyone is trained as sudras these days. So when they don't have a master, they're completely lost, as you said. Anything else? Yes. Have the mic, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Florida. We're so grateful to have you back. I remember when you came a long time ago and brought all of your DVDs, and we've been watching them for years. So thank you so much for your service. Yeah.
Thank you.
You spoke a bit about responsibility. We hear that if you take 100% responsibility, this is like a mantra now that Tony Robbins or one of these big gurus will say. But there is some truth if we learn to take 100% responsibility and not blame others.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about how that has showed up in your life and in your devotional service to Prabhupada and your mood of service for devotees?
Yeah, well, I think when we're not following the principles so closely, the psychological force is to criticize, be critical. It's a very strong psychological impetus, force. So please be very careful of criticism. That will destroy our bhakti. And it can be very subtle, and we have to be very, very vigilant not to criticize others, especially, exalted Vaishnavas. The biggest problem is, of course, there's many problems in managing the spiritual life. It's not an easy path. But the biggest aparad is to reject the spiritual master and also to reject the teachings of the Vedic literature. Sense gratificatory, problems, breaking the principles, that's not as serious. Of course, it will prevent us from advancing. That's for sure. But we have to be careful about the ultimate aparadhas, attending exalted Vaishnavas. Okay? Sometimes we can learn from these present-day gurus like Tony Robbins. He has some good things to say. And people, somewhat are improving their lives. But he hasn't got 100% knowledge. We have to go to the source where everything is perfect. All knowledge is there. And that's this Krishna consciousness movement. I haven't seen anything that's matches it. Far from it. It's such a complete body of knowledge, and you can go very, very deep and reaching the ultimate goal. I remember being with Prabhupada in the early days in Mumbai, and we were taking lunch actually just before lunch. Prabhupada was taking massage. We're at Kartikeya Mahadeva's house. Kartikeya Mahadeva would invite his friends to hear Prabhupada lecture at night. And Prabhupada was so practically yelling at the guests to become Krishna conscious and spread it all over the world. And it was, and we can see the result of that today. Back then we had a handful of Indian followers, but today they're everywhere, all over the world. So Prabhupada's potency, that he started that huge wave of immigration outside of India with Krishna conscious persons who are making a huge difference in the world. So anyway, we're at Prabhupada took his massage and bath and came out of his room. We were all kind of lined up outside his room, and he would walk to the dining table. So he came out of his room, and as he passed by us, he looked at us, he said, "Back home, back to Godhead." And that was it. Just such we just wanted to follow Prabhupada. Follow him into the dining room, take prasadam with him. But unfortunately, we were not we weren't considered leaders then or anyone significant. So the leaders got to follow Prabhupada and got to take prasadam. We were escorted out of the apartment down on the streets in Mumbai with the horns blaring and so forth. So Prabhupada's our captain of the ship, leading us back home, back to Godhead. It was such a beautiful experience. Little things like that are very significant. Anything else? Yes.
You mentioned about your first meeting with Prabhupada in India, and Prabhupada asked you to become a devotee, but you rejected. You're not interested. So I was wondering, when did you decide to take up the process, and when was the turning point? Did it happen in the 2 months when you traveled with Prabhupada, or later on? Or?
Yeah, it happened gradually with me. I was very dull and still am. But yes, it was a gradual process. But I could tell that Prabhupada, he knew my heart and mind. So he said, "You cannot stay," but then he let me stay because I had some attraction. So when I first came, I was doing an article on the New York Temple for Asia magazine as a reporter. And my girlfriend at the time, Jean, I was John, she was Jean, she wrote the article. And I was attracted right from the beginning, but she was an atheist. And she was very heavy, preaching to her friends to become atheists. Good preacher. And today she's Vishaka Devi, the president of the Bhaktivedanta Manor. So from atheist to theist, this was Prabhupada's magic. Sometimes people would ask Prabhupada, "Can you show me some magic?" And Prabhupada would refer to his disciples, "This is my magic." So that's the hardest thing, is to change someone's consciousness. That's not easy. Mystic yogis may be able to produce some ash or some gold. What is the use? Especially ashes. and gold just makes you greedy. So yeah, that was Prabhupada's magic. And working, wonderfully all over the world. It's nice to be here in front of so many bright faces. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing your lessons. I was just wondering if you had any lessons around japa and how to go to the distance in chanting the holy name.
Good question. That's a very important topic around japa. I have a 2-minute japa class Would you like to hear? Actually, Samakarishi Prabhu, my godbrother, asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, my job is not very good. My mind keeps getting in the way. I keep having, my mind just keeps going. So Prabhupada said, what is the question of mind? You speak and it goes in the ear and you hear. That's all. That's the question of mind. And so if we can do that, that will help a lot. But if we continue just chanting japa, but our mind's going, and that's so easy to do. I mean, I remember making films during filmmaking, and even now, so many technical things to think about. So I would wake up in the morning thinking about the movies. But that wasn't productive. It doesn't really help. If you actually concentrate on your japa, then everything will be much easier. And let the mind work on it later. So just try that in your japa time. You have to be really conscious. If you see the mind getting in the way, in between your chanting and hearing, then let's bring it back. Or you just hear the sound of Hare Krishna. You speak and you hear. Very simple. That's the class. Okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you. You talked about the importance of prayer, but then you also said how we all have our certain karmic allowances, but we should depend on the mercy of Krishna at the same time. So how do we pray in such a way that we recognize we're not attached to the result of our prayer, but we're also dependent on everything, material and spiritual, upon Krishna?
Say the question, the last part.
Like you said, we should depend on Krishna for everything material and spiritual, but how do we understand how to pray without being attached to the result, because it may not be within our karma?
And we shouldn't be attached to anything. We should, if we're attached to something, we should pray for detachment. Because on our own, it's very difficult. We're in the kingdom of Maya. We have these bodies that are dictating practically all the time to satisfy the senses. So we have to pray to be relieved from that, to get out and give up all attachments. If there's a tiny bit of attachment, then we have to stay. Maybe in a more elevated state, a more elevated position, but we still have to stay. I think, Maharaj, you were mentioning yesterday that if we give up these sense gratificatory habits, but the biggest thing to conquer is fame. Yes, that's the hardest. I think Sanatana Goswami writes that. The desire for fame and adoration, distinction. Yeah. There's many tests. Krishna just keeps giving tests. And we just try to pass them. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Just on this topic about how we shouldn't be attached to anything, there's different opinions often about the Grihastha ashram and how much it's healthy to be attached or detached. And I'm just wondering if you had something you could share with me to help me about that, because I'm sometimes confusing about whether or not I should just practice as best I can and wait for the detachment to come, or proactively try to become detached from something.
And this is a delicate subject. Right, Maharaj?
Delicate, especially because his wife is here.
Where is she? Hare Krishna. We shouldn't artificially try to become detached. Attachment may be there, but that should gradually decrease as we advance in Krishna consciousness. Not that we become indifferent or not caring and not responsible. We should be responsible. You know, you have children. It's this next generation. They're taking over. Very, very, responsible and caring. But you know, our attachment to the material world will gradually become less and less with old age. You know, that's a benefit of old age. We become less attached. So don't think this won't happen to you. Prabhupada said. He looked up at us on his bed in Vrindavan in the last days, and he could hardly move. He said, "Don't think this won't happen to you." But Prabhupada, he was fully Krishna conscious, so he wasn't affected by that. I remember massaging him in those last days, and his body was going through some, it looked like pain. So I asked Prabhupada, "Are you feeling pain?" I didn't want to disturb him or cause him pain. And immediately he looked up at me, opened his eyes immediately and said no. He was completely behind that bodily platform. So that's what we aspire for. I remember in a room with Prabhupada, actually alone at that time. He was living in one of the apartments in the Juhu property. And one man came in, he threw himself on the full dandavats. He started praising Prabhupada. "Oh, Prabhupada, Swamiji, you've done so much, you've printed so many books, you have so many disciples." And he didn't stop, he just went on and on. So finally, Prabhupada looked at him, he said, "You become like me." I was shocked. This man become like Prabhupada? But Prabhupada meant it. He wanted everyone to become fully Krishna conscious. So we have a big task. Yes.
A comment on the detachment, delicate subject. This comes to mind that Srila Prabhupada made a distinction between attachment and over-attachment. And he spoke about the importance, not importance, he said it's natural to be attached. If you're not attached to your children, chances are it's not going to be a very good interaction. So Prabhupada emphasized the over-attachment, and that's another whole discussion about what's over-attachment and what's detachment. But detachment, and just for a bit of a laugh, I used to mention in some Grihastha seminars that we present. I said, we've come together to talk about attachment, and we'd say you have to become attached, because if you're not attached to your wife or your husband, you'll get attached to somebody else's wife or husband. So start getting attached, don't get over-attached, and then we can keep making progress, I believe.
We can become attached and at the same time detached. It has to be very responsible, as I said before, and take good care. But at the same time, know that this is not our. This is not Maharaj, help me.
Sure, I'll be glad to help you. We all know that everyone should wear saffron.
I was always afraid that Prabhupada asked me to take sannyas. Because there was a time when he was asking lots of grihastas to take sannyas. I was terrified.
I think the predicament is resolved by what Prabhupada writes in one purport in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that husband and wife should be attached to each other for the sake of devotional service. So we see that in your relationship with Srimati Vishaka Devi, that service has always been the unifying factor. So we are all grateful for that attachment between you two.
It's wonderful to see our partner become advanced in Krishna consciousness, especially her journey, because she was an atheist, a hardcore atheist. She's very intelligent. Her brother is some kind of genius. Anyway, he became one of the heads of the, what was that movement? They were out in front of post offices. They really believed that their whole thing was science. Scientology? No, it wasn't Scientology. It was some other group. I forgot. Anyway, she's given an account of her journey from atheism to theism in her book. Does anybody know what that book is? Have you seen that book? It's called 5 Years, 11 Months in a Lifetime of Unexpected Love. So 5 years, 11 months was her time with Prabhupada. And it's an amazing book. Showing her change of consciousness, how that happened in Prabhupada's association. Yes. So we can end here?
While I'm speaking,
Well,
down memory lane.
When Srila Prabhupada said you couldn't stay, can you remember what your reaction or thoughts were around that few hours or days? What were you kind of thinking about?
yeah, I was bewildered. I came 10,000 miles and I can't stay. And look, my fault. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I decided to do my master's thesis in photography on the devotees in India because I had some attachment. I did that article for Asia magazine that was published, and so I just showed up. In fact, when I knocked on the door where the devotees were staying, Rishi Kumar, who answered the door, he was the president of the New York Temple when I was there doing the article. So I was shocked to see him, and he was really shocked to see me. So yeah, Vishaka came 2 months later, so maybe my book should be 6 years, 1 month. And she came 2 months later, and then we asked Prabhupada. I had finished photographing for my thesis. So we asked Prabhupada, I wanted to do a story on a quaint Indian village, untouched by Western technology. So we asked Prabhupada where to go, and he said, anywhere you go, you'll get your camera stolen, and they will cheat you. So he said, best to go to Vrindavan. Hari Bol. That was it for Vishaka. I'm supposed to speak about this later on, illustrated. So yeah, there's many wonderful times at Prabhupada. I was in the Paris installation of the deities. There was a big kirtan after the installation. So I was taking pictures of the kirtan, pictures of Prabhupada. And then I thought I would join the kirtan, so I put my camera down and started dancing on the kirtan. And I look at Prabhupada, and it goes like this to me. So I come over to the Vyasa song, and it was really, Prabhupada said something I couldn't hear. The kirtan was roaring. So I put my ear really close to Prabhupada's mouth. And I heard, never put down your camera. So I went over, picked it up, continued to shoot. Nowadays it's easier because I carry my phone with a camera. Anyway. Any other comments, questions? I'm not, this is not my comfortable position being up front, frankly speaking. I like to be behind the camera, like you. Yes.
I was just wondering, what was your attraction, attracted you or motivated to pick that subject for you?
What attracted me?
Yeah.
Actually, everything attracted me. When I walked in the temple, I was kind of overwhelmed. And it took me immediately to the first arti ceremony that I attended. And there was Lord Jagannath Bhagavad Baladev. I have this, it's like kind of a vision that of doors opening in my mind, going back and back and back into eternity. And then I had this thought that this is my eternal relationship to serve Krishna. So these, I think we've all had similar instances or something. We should treasure those, and because that's a window to the spiritual world. We should never forget those times. In the meantime, the material world's going on, and our minds are going on and on and on. Let's try to control it with especially java. Yes, Prabhu.
You mentioned about how the most dangerous thing is fame. And the mind sometimes can be very, very tricky. And one may say, well, actually, the reason why I want to be famous is as a service to Krishna. If I become famous, then I'll be able to spread his glories more and more. So how can one differentiate that I actually want to spread Krishna's glories or spread my own glories?
If that's a pure desire, then it's welcome. But if it's not, it can be a problem. So we have to pray for purity. That's where prayer comes in. We're quite helpless, I mentioned before. Surrounded by Krishna's external energy, including the mind. And Prabhupada says it's a gradual process. That's how for most of us, it's a very gradual process. It's a rare person to come into Krishna consciousness and just go straight through. That's happened. Following everything perfectly and properly. Following all the principles.
Reciting
our prayer only be reciting previous acharyas' prayers or our own?
We could do both. We could both recite the previous Acharya's prayers, and also, if we're inspired, we have our own prayers. Depending on our condition, our experience, our realization. That's welcome. Very personal. Yeah.
Prabhu, you were talking about the wave that Prabhupada started. You were speaking to Mahadevia. So we've seen this wave. Now, how can we expand that wave to the other people that are not in it? Have you observed anything like
How do we expand that way? Show them the Hare Krishna movie. And they have a 90-minute darshan with Prabhupada. Yeah. We've seen miraculous changes in people after watching the movie. Even people who know nothing about anything. Krishna, Hare Krishna, never heard of them, never saw them. There was this one lady who came to the premiere in New York City. They were showing it in a multiplex theater with 6 theaters. I saw her come in, and she saw the poster, and I was sitting at a table. So she came in, she was like the typical New Yorker. She was a filmmaker, actually. You know, just rushing around, you know, passionate, like anything. She said, "Oh, I've heard about you people. I'd like to see this. I'd like to, but there's another film I'm going to go to first." So she ran off. She came out of that film very quickly, went in art, Hare Krishna movie, and came out. When she came out, she was completely transformed. Completely transformed. And she was a filmmaker.
What was the transformation?
Her face was, she was glowing. She was happy. She wasn't so passionate. She was just fixed on Prabhupada. It was startling. And we've seen other times where people watch the film, they're crying throughout the film, and they become devotees. We've seen that several times in Govardhan Eco Village. I spend quite a few months there every year. We show the movie to yoga people, seekers from all over the world. And they're amazed at Prabhupada's journey, his life, his dedication. So please, how many have not seen the movie? Uh-oh. We're going to show a short version one of these nights. It's a 90-minute film. We've cut it down to 47 minutes and 29 minutes with great difficulty. And we did that for schools because we've seen that children, if they watch the movie, they'll never forget Prabhupada. Even the 6-year-old girl, I asked her, how did you like the movie? She said, I cried. So please, let's don't forget this. I'm the director. I'm promoting my own film, but we didn't make it. There's so many magical moments that came together to make this movie. It took us 4 years, and we had a great team. And plus, we had a couple of Hollywood directors and producers help us because they saw an early cut of the film. They fell in love with Prabhupada. They gave us all of their contacts and their information and their experience. Yeah, it's a huge effect on people. It's on YouTube also. Yes.
Hare Krishna. You talked about the fact that you've been in Bhakti now for over 50 years and it hasn't always been easy. So with that experience, is there anything that you know now that you maybe wish that you had have known earlier at the beginning of your journey, or tad bits of wisdom.
I wish I would have been more serious and really take it for what it is, such a valuable gem. But you know, as I said, there's so many distractions on the way. We have to, you know, stick with it and not deviate. And I said, as you grow older and older, that will naturally come, that detachment from material, sense gratification of material desires. Maya is a great lesson. A great teacher. So just stick with it, and you know, if you're sincere and serious, then that will come more and more. Then the result will be there. Yes.
Speaking of distractions, when it comes to prayer, do you recommend praying for material things or not doing that because Krishna's in the heart and he knows all of your desires?
Yeah. If we have material desires, Krishna will present us with those, how to fulfill that. That's what he does. Whatever we desire, he gives us opportunity to fulfill those desires. Yeah, we have to be careful. We have to. We shouldn't think that Krishna's making facility if it shows up to fulfill our material desires. He wants us to fulfill our material desires now. We desired and he fulfilled it because that's what we wanted. We wanted to be the controller, so he gave us this playground to try to be the controller. That was a big mistake. We're all victims of that deviant consciousness. Is that okay? Don't pray for material desires.
Thank you. That's clear.
Krishna will fill everything if we work on our spiritual life, concentrate on spiritual advancement. Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your lovely class. I learned a lot. You were talking about praying for purity. So how can we adopt this mood in our devotional service to ensure that our service is unmotivated? Because we may say, oh, it's for Krishna's pleasure, but subconsciously we have contaminated desires.
So how do we
cultivate unselfish or selfless devotional service?
The best means is prayer. I mean, we need to follow the process as follow the process and get good association from others who are serious about spiritual life. There's interesting analysis of different types of devotees given by Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj from England. He said the majority of devotees, they're cultural devotees. They accept the culture, but they're not so intent on advancing. The next level up are devotees who have some taste for Krishna consciousness, but they're still attached to material things. And the topmost are those who are fully Krishna conscious and have no material desires. So we have to be careful not just to accept it, this Krishna consciousness movement as a cultural thing only. become more and more serious about advancing. Ever heard that analysis, Maya?
Well, I would say here in the super religious country of New Zealand, I would say that 98% of the devotees in this room are not here because of culture. So I can see how that would be so in the UK.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. You were talking about, and what's been asked already about how we should never leave, like never leave, never give up. And I can see on reflection with my own struggles that I've had, that one of the impetuses that could drive someone to leave is shame. Especially because, like, when you're in the association of devotees and you know the standard, and you may have been on that standard before, but when you face struggles, yeah, you can feel quite ashamed, and that can be an impetus or an excuse to leave, which you can justify, I guess, in your own mind. Like, I can remember thinking for myself, like, how can I be a devotee, or will I ever be a devotee? So how do you overcome the shame? Because some of the problems or issues that come up, they don't go away very easily as well, and so that can be lingering with repeated failure to come to the standard that you know, because you lived with devotees, you read the books, you hear the lectures. Yeah, how do you deal with that shame?
By purely chanting, by association with those you can make friends with and reveal your mind, and by the process, the whole process of Krishna consciousness. We may, leave for some time. But if we have any taste at all for Krishna consciousness, we'll eventually come back. I was in a room with an ex-sannyasi in Prabhupada's room at Laguna Beach, and he came in. He said, "Prabhupada, I'm trying to forget Krishna." I was shocked. And Prabhupada looked at him and he said, "That is not possible." So if we have any taste at all, we'll return sooner or later. It could be a long time later. But anyone who's done any devotional service at all, they're on the path. So try to find a few friends. Doesn't have to be many. Prabhupada told two ladies, actually, Yamuna Devi and Dinatarni, they had moved out of the temple, and they had their own ashram. So they're criticized by the leaders for going off. So Prabhupada defended them. He said two or 200. If the association is compatible, then it's fine. So, that help? Okay. Thank you very much. We're over time.
Right on time.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.